Thank you very much for joining us on this rainy February morning. We've got an insight-packed session today, so much so that we've actually had to reduce it somewhat. But before I delve into that, my name's Corus. I'm from Impero, and taking you through today's presentation is Chris, our Chief Strategy Officer. So today we're going to be looking at how consumers will be shopping in 2021, and we're going to be delving into some of the big trends that are driving their purchase habits and what channels and tech innovations is set to continue to grow, amongst many other things. As I said, this is insight packed to the point where we felt we've actually had to cut this in half and do it in 2 phases. So originally we were going to cover off 10 big trends, but that could go on for some time. So we've decided to cut it down to 5 key ones. And then with any of the others that we mentioned, then we're happy to do follow-up sessions with anyone, or possibly we might cover those off in another session. So before I pass you over to Chris, I just want to say thanks for sharing your key challenges and concerns. We're very much going to be doing a Q&A at the end, which is what we like to do, where we can actually address the questions you have directly. So again, if some of the things we talked about haven't been covered, or you'd like to delve deeper in those, then feel free to use the Q&A tab in the bottom of the window, at the bottom of the Zoom window, just to ask those questions. I'll be collating them, and then once we've covered off the main presentation, then we'll be moving on to Q&As at the end. So with that said, I'm going to pass you over to Chris, who's going to delve straight into this week's presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to share some hopefully thoughtful and insightful predictions on how we'll shop in the future. And look, it's always difficult when anyone tries to make a prediction of something that's going to happen in the future, because there's not necessarily enough data points to do it. So it's relatively easy to do hindsight. It's relatively easy to do insight, what's happening right now. We're talking about foresight here. We're trying to gather what the world, and specifically we focus a little bit on the UK, will be thinking and feeling. So we sort of developed a bit of a what we think hopefully is a smart methodology that does 2 things. One, it saves everyone a job, and we are not the only organisation out there thinking about the future right now. There's plus 40 different trend reports that you could go and read that will tell you wonderful things about what the future holds. What we thought would be interesting, predominantly number 1, is just to save everyone having to read 40 different reports. So we read all these reports so that you don't have to, and then we condensed them into kind of a central report, sort of the trends of the trends, as we referred to it. So not only does it save everyone time, it's actually a bit clever, because whenever anyone writes a report, they have author bias, especially when you're looking at the future and the echo chamber that is the internet. When you start searching for something, you then get more things like that. So you end up confirming your biases just by looking for things. So what we think we've got is a bigger sample size of trends. So hopefully it'll be more robust and a better indicator of future consumer behavior, or that's the idea anyway. Hopefully the test of time will tell whether we've got this right at the end of the year. So these are the 10 trends that we've identified. So there's acts of happiness, the roaring 20s, experimenting, the hectic home life, the great escape, life unfiltered, connected commerce, conscious consumerism, me, and community spirit. And as you can see, what we've done is we've looked at all of these sub-trends to try and find these mega trends that sit above it. We're going to be focusing on 5 of them today. As Corus said, I was a little bit ambitious what I thought we could get done in an hour, and a quick rehearsal last night would mean that I would fry everyone's brain and everyone would drop off after 30 minutes as I rattle through this at speed. So we're going to focus on the roaring 20s, the hectic home life, connected commerce, conscious consumerism, and community spirit. But please, if you're interested in any of the others, just reach out to myself or Corus. We'd love to share it with you, and there's some great stuff in there. There's one big thing I want to say to everyone, which is why I think this trends report this year is the most exciting. 2020 was the most homogenized year of marketing ever. And what I mean by that is we're all in the same boat, or at least the same storm for the entire part of 2020. that rarely happens in kind of consumer psyche. You can name a few occasions: Christmas Day, when England score a goal, when England get knocked out of the Euros. There's a couple of moments in time when we all feel the same way. And when we feel the same way, it's often that brands end up doing similar things, quite honestly. And if you look back at 2020, there were so many brands that spoke in the same way. I'm sure many of you have seen the meme video about every brand sounding the same, doing the same thing in reflection to COVID. Um, What's really interesting, and this is a slightly UK focus, and it's different for different markets around the world, is we've got more certainty in terms of when herd immunity hopefully would be achieved with COVID-19. The predictions are the 14th of July for those that are interested in the UK. That's when the UK would have reached 75% of herd immunity. And what that means, not just for us as brand custodians, but for consumers, is they've got more certainty. And what they'll do with that certainty is they're going to want to remove the boredom. We're all a bit, I don't know about you, but January was boring. February doesn't seem that much more exciting so far. We're desperate to move away from the same narrative that we've had for 2020. So what we think is this is a huge year for brands to embrace these new opportunities, that consumers are going to want to have more pleasure to break boredom that has been the year past. So on to the trends. Some of them are remaining the same. So conscious consumerism, right? So there's a few nuances of where it's changed this year, or we think it will change. So it encompasses themes like sustainability, health, pre-loved, war on waste, and the kind of considered purchase. When we look at the data, we can see things like on Waitrose, Mediterranean, it's kind of shot up by 630. The kind of no and low alcohol trend massively continued. Vegan beauty, everyone's thinking about how to make myself better, and without compromise and taste and enjoyment. And then immunity starting to play a role. We were lucky enough to launch Mike's Hard Seltzer in the UK this year, which is a huge success from a standing start in the seltzer category against I think 18 competitors in the end, which plays into the health space. But what we're finding is it's not just sustainable, it's the responsibility that comes with the purchase behavior. So the refilling stations, the wonky veg, the re-commerce. So there's a huge amount of interest that's been generated. Google Trends show that sustainable and local food are massively up, and 75% of fashion shoppers agree that they only buy when they need to. So people are thinking sustainable and responsible around their purchases. But we did some research, and I should have said this at the beginning. We did a piece of research. We went out to about 700 national representative shoppers here in the UK, just to understand a bit more on some purchase behaviour. And we've put a few bits of that data in here today. And what we found is 9% of consumers found a brand's stance on sustainability is the most important factor. So the vast majority of people, sustainability and CSR is not enough alone. They still require reputation, brand, and benefits. They need more than just being a good brand to influence decision making. And this is really interesting. So sustainability seems like a huge thing, but then at the same time, it's not the primary factor. In reality, it's a secondary factor. And lots of brands have piled into this, and it's done a couple of things. First of all, mistrust. There was a report that came out last week which shows the majority of European consumers have greater mistrust for the food sector than ever before. No one trusts the claims. And then COVID has had this huge effect on opening up a new generation of consumers to this. So Accenture, Ipsos, Euromonitor are all predicting, because of COVID, we're now going to have a stronger environmentally friendly outlook on life than ever before. What we also find is when you think about sustainability, it's not just what brands can do. So consumers believe that brands should show an active role, but they also believe that they actually want to share their ideas and experience. They want to have an active participating role. And this leads us to a kind of a simple thought, that conscious consumerism is only one motivation to purchase. And when you look at kind of segmentation models a few years ago. You'd have, the eco warrior consumer, a distinct personality and a target consumer that you would go, yes, they're driven by that. But actually, what we found now when we look at the data is highly brand conscious driven consumers are the same as sustainable driven consumers. And you see this best reflected in the world of fashion. It's the reason why so many fashion brands have lent into sustainability, because they've realized that design and brand conscious consumers also happen to be sustainable. So if you're thinking we need a sustainability policy that talks about our eco credentials, if you're not doing that in tandem by taking a brand driven approach, you're missing out on the other 81% of people that don't think sustainability is the most important factor. So the key takeout of this is just don't make consumers pick between themselves and the world. They're more disconcerting, less likely to fall for kind of the old-fashioned greenwashing that's kind of crept back into the world. And they want to make a positive change, drive initiative forward. They don't expect the brand to do it all on their own. And if we can do that, we can link the sustainable and green mindset to brand as well, because sustainable on its own is not enough. A great example from this energy brand that's focused on its energy credentials and in terms of green energy. And what they did is they used art. So a really emotional and interesting, evocative way to bring their story to life. They didn't just talk about CO2 emissions and stats and numbers. They brought it together in a kind of brand centric way, and phenomenal results. 37,000 new customers in a sector which typically has low engagement, 55% higher engagement versus social shopping. Versus commercial advertising. So on to our next point. So our desire to support can be an active part of communities. They've got stronger, and 60% of us have got involved in our local communities during lockdown. So this is our next trend, is community spirit. It encompasses everything from shopping local, physical communities, but virtual or digital communities as well, social responsibility, and the British and proud. So we know, obviously, and many of you would have seen the data from people like Kantar and such, that we switched how we shopped. Part of lockdown encouraged us to shop local, and it's really interesting how this trend is looking to continue. So our own research found that about 2/3 of us are likely to continue to shop in independents, and 70% of us want to continue to shop local. It does seem like the local convenience, co-ops and small independents this world look like they're going to do well. But there's also this move to supporting kind of causes. So, shopping with Black-owned businesses increasing, a huge increase in the wake of Black Lives Matters in 2020. So it's really interesting. But what we find is British is going to take a kind of comeback. Now, this is spurred on from Brexit, when we're all feeling a little bit more patriotic. And people are considering, they believe that British products are better quality and safer than other countries. And we've seen safety suddenly dial up in terms of purchase intent in recent years, and especially driven on by COVID. People scared of kind of imports, especially from afar and some of the Asian markets. Consumers are more likely to buy British. And they actually, but there's this confusion about what is British. Do they truly believe it's made in Britain? And even the EU was confused a little bit about what defines a product being made in Britain. There's X% has to be created. So if you're a British made brand, there's a huge opportunity to tap into that patriotic angle. But communities aren't just physical. Again, spurred on by COVID, we turned to virtual communities. We had these voids, and we almost had no other choice of how to meet, how to catch up. Gaming in particular soared in popularity. Things like Animal Crossing, where you could kind of have a social aspect to your lockdown life, absolutely took off. And TikTok, for all of its faults and love that people have for it, well, one of the things that means it's so successful is the duet capability, because it feels like you're in a mini community with someone. and that you can take part and they can take part. It's not a one-way communication. So it's really interesting, and you can see brands like Little Moons. If you're on TikTok or any of the other kind of social channels, you've probably been flooded with this in recent months. But they managed to get 700% increase in retailers. They in Tesco's predominantly, they sold out on Amazon Fresh, and 350% increase in Waitrose. And it was this trend of on TikTok of people talking about how they couldn't get the product and rushing down to the local Tesco's and how they had to try it as this kind of crazy fad. And it really tapped into this virtual community, and it was started by a couple of influencers and then spread like wildfire because it was easy to take part, easy to join in the fun, and made you feel kind of closer and connected to the people in a moment of void. And more recently, for those that enjoy watching the stock market, virtual communities can be sort of powerful agents of change. So I guess as they've increased in size and deeper levels of connection, your online friends suddenly are really powerful as a group of people, but their level of influence. And you saw this twice in the last few weeks. So GameStop, which is a physical kind of shop in the US that sells games, soared in stock price via an app called Robinhood, and consumers tried to outbid and the short or long selling, I can't remember which way around it was, for the Wall Street investors, and had a good go with it. And then the same has just happened with silver. Started on Reddit, the value of silver just soared, and it was the inflated value that comes from the power of a community to make change happen. And we can only predict that this sense of community and strength will continue this year. So the key takeout is communities can act not just as brand ambassadors, but actual catalysts to cut through the complexity of making choices, can help our shopper decision-making process, because it kind of creates a cluster, and that noise can just kind of cut through. So what we believe is brands should think about empowering those communities. There's a lot of nurturing out there in social, a lot of sort of putting out content, but they don't actually do anything to light a fire under the community and let them take control of the destination. We've all put a lot of importance of our well-being and lifestyle over the last year, and this is going to continue. So the hectic home life is our third trend. It's become a place to live and work. We're multitasking, we're dressing for the occasion and mood, and we're avoiding burnouts. So we all agreed, 78% of us globally, that our home was our sanctuary during 2020. And as a result, we kind of upgraded of our homes. We kind of had people peering into our homes. So suddenly we wanted, beautiful artwork and plants and painting and etc. This is probably a permanent shift. So about 25 to 30% of the workforce will continue to work from home permanently in 2021. So the idea that many of us will go back to the office permanently is probably not true. It will probably be a mix of the two. And that will create a big seismic change in how we use our homes. So we spent more money on home improvements. So aged 18 to 40 would especially like to do it. I think the value was a lot of people paused their mortgages. They didn't go on holidays. I think the average investment in the home was something like £3,400 during COVID, a huge amount invested into a multifunctional space. And they had to do a lot of things. It was a place to relax, place to indulge, a place to live. Suddenly it had to do so many different things. So 1 in 5 of us kind of reconfigured our spaces to allow multiple activities through the day. And this sort of constant multitasking sort of has redefined work-life balance, and not for the positive, I'm afraid to say. So 80% of us say that's had some negative effect on their mental health and well-being. A lot of people are working longer hours, so we've given up our commutes, but we're just sticking that time straight into working, so that we have no decompression time. And I'm sure many of you have felt that as well. And we're more likely to take a sick day due to this burnout they're all experiencing. So yeah, it's not a particularly positive thing, this working from home phenomenon, even though it's going to set to continue. So what we've done is a couple of things to cope with this. We've tried to relax our minds, and we've dressed a lot more comfortable. So many of us have increased our purchasing power on loungewear. So, being comfortable in home is one of the outputs of kind of dealing with stress, but also just being comfortable in our own spaces, which is really interesting. But what this means is we're at high risk of burnout. So sitting in some comfy pants, I'm afraid, is just not going to be enough to stop the potential of burnout. And 59% of us are now taking just less time off than we usually would, or just not taking any time off. So, as I said, we might be comfortable, but we're not actually giving ourselves the breaks that we deserve. So the key takeout for brands is it's about finding an advantage in these at-home lifestyles. So really think about how do we support consumers' well-being by easing that already hectic lifestyle, enabling stress-free multitasking, and promoting good balance. And I love this case study from KitKat. So they found a great way to remind people to kind of take a break. So lots of associated trends that happened in the last few years with colouring in and puzzle sales soared, but they tapped into model aeroplanes, and they obviously, it's quite straightforward what they did. They put their KitKat in that environment and allowed you to not only enjoy your KitKat, but build an aeroplane and enjoy that experience. So a great way of enabling people to relax and take a break. So we've done the first couple of trends. Unfortunately, we're going to skip doing me, which would have encompassed self-care, well-being, health, and me time. Oh no, we're not. We are going to do that one. Sorry, I take it back. Let me just check. Yes, we are doing that one. We are going to find out about that. So those of you who were disappointed for a second, that is coming up next. So the mental health crisis. So we already talked about this a little bit, but I just want to delve into it a little bit more. So Mind has done some research that we've got this mental health crisis that's kind of looming post-COVID. Helplines are probably likely to continue to be hugely busy, and volume levels are up massively. So we're becoming a bit more selfish with our time and care. So we're trying to spend more time listening to calming music, or eating healthier, or just doing things that make us feel a little bit better. So food and drink will play a huge role in our lifestyles to do that. So we often seek well-being from a level of indulgence and comfort that food and drink can offer us, which comes as no surprise to many of you. But we all need to kind of pamper ourselves, and we're seeing it in things like sleep. And there's some great data from Pinterest about silk sleepwear up 60%, or spiritual cleansing baths up 180%, or full moon bath rituals up 90%. I'd love to try one of them. People are seeking active ways to kind of switch off from the kind of mental health that we're suffering. And this reliance on digital devices has grown, but we're increasingly looking to kind of have a digital detox. So, just switching off those devices. It's increasing trend in younger generations, 5 times more likely to switch off from some of those. And a lot of people are saying that companies need to be doing more to tackle the problem. So the key takeout from this is brands should find ways to make a switch off and incentivize selfish behavior. Birchbox is a great campaign that they did. It's called All About You. And it was tapping into that moment of kind of overworking and burnout. And it sort of positioned itself as a provider of well-being, but it really kind of took the time to think about that. So in each box was a poem about self-care to motivate you and reminding the customers the importance of looking after themselves. So really tapping into that need of me time. So Acts of happiness, which would have included search for good news, indulgence, and be kind. I'm afraid we are going to skip. Oh no, I keep. Oh, which? Sorry, I'm wondering which ones we're skipping.
No,
Corus, so we.
no, I think Chris, you just need to skip ahead to the Roaring Twenties one.
I do. I think we've added an extra bonus one in, which is throwing me. So
Yeah.
we would have done escapism and experimenting, and now we're going to have a look at the Roaring Twenties. So this is an exciting one. It's about getting back out there, celebrations, the social cravings, and the spend not save mentality. So this is some research that we did. We spent a year basically at home, and the thing that we're most looking forward to doing is meeting relatives and friends. So huge percent of us, 34% of us, are looking forward to meeting friends. Going to the gym is only 3%, which surprised me. We're clearly not looking forward to that whatsoever. And then second to that, it's meeting friends and going to the pub and restaurants. So people are going to look for quality time with loved ones. And this is going to be at home, and the on trade should see an absolute kind of frenzy of activity as people look to meet up. But I think other brands can join in. The sort of sharing formats and moments, I think, will be key to the shopper mission as we invite our friends round. And the casual dress code is likely to remain a big trend within that. So this is a great quote from J.J. Abrams. He's I think he's a director. He created Armageddon, which is maybe an odd choice for a quote of a man that makes disaster movies. But he was talking about, the 1918 pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic, as it was called, and talked about the Roaring Twenties and how this sort of pent up need and desperate need to see each other kind of materialized otherwise. And he was talking about it in the terms and sense of the movies, and I think it's just a great way of understanding, the kind of consumer psyche to this. There's nothing that I can think of that is more exciting than being in a theatre with people you don't know, who don't necessarily like the same sport teams, or pray to the same god, or eat the same food, but you're screaming together, laughing together, crying together. It's a social necessity. And I think that really hits home the powerful idea of the connections that we're going to want to rekindle in the year ahead. But even when things have been closed, we still found ways to spend. So we actually saved a lot of money during lockdown. The UK built up quite a big war chest. And unlike maybe our European counterparts, we'll probably keep that war chest for a rainy day. The British psyche is more likely to just go out there and spend it. We're a spend-led economy. And people during lockdown spent more on streaming services. We spent more on disposable items, and even men doubled their spend on appearance compared to women. And so what we noticed is, while we kind of hope to save, we're equally intending to splash the cash too. So this is a piece of research we did, and we think the most interesting one to look at is our Gen Zs here on the right-hand side. At the bottom is the spend more, buy more stuff. At the top is the don't know. Our yellows are quite similar there. But the most interesting piece of this is this Gen Z consumer that equally want to spend more, but at the same time also thinks they're going to save more. So they want to have their cake and eat it. And it really talks about this idea of living moment in the now. They want to do the best they possibly can. So what we think we'll be doing is making up for lost time. It's going to be valuing the time that we spend socializing with others in venues that were potentially out of bounds. So the key takeout here is, as soon as we're able to, we're going to be living for the weekend. And the second point, I'll be honest, is my author bias. So judge me if you will. But if we're all working from home, then I'm pretty sure that the big midweek cheeky beers is going to become a thing, because we can all just roll out of bed the next day. There's no commute for those that are working from home, and there's no boss to judge you. Now, we haven't had that temptation. So I think the idea of course, the big social occasions are going to be really important. The big football games, Euros, the big weekends, all of these are going to be important. But I think we will look to find big in everything we do. at least for a period of time, and probably the year ahead, as we explore this kind of new frontier where we've got freedom back in our lives. Miller Lite did a great campaign that encouraged brands to reconnect in person by offering a free beer. It was a bit of a steal from a Whopper campaign that was done a few years ago about unfriending. But the idea was, if you could meet up with your friend in real life and unfriend Miller Lite, they would give you a free beer. So generated phenomenal success and encouraged people to put down their phones. So the ninth trend we're going to talk about is the connected commerce. So this encompasses social commerce, voice commerce, contactless economy, shop streaming, D2C and physical stores. And I know that's a question many of you are kind of thinking about. So 70% of consumers are searching for products on Instagram and Facebook. And what's really interesting is they're buying things off the back of it. I'm sure you've all seen the memes that Instagram made me do it or TikTok made me do it. We all know that we trust influencers more than we trust brands. And we're making purchase decisions now off the back of that. So social commerce will continue to boom. And then shop streaming is going to be particularly big. So some data that was looked at recently, about 29% of internet users across 7 countries who watch live streams will then follow them on social media. And 80% said they're likely to buy products as a result. So we all know the power of film and TVCs. And when you have a live broadcast from a trusted source that you've been following online, you're more likely to purchase from them. Voice is going to be huge. So at the moment, 20% of consumers use them for shopping related activities, which isn't huge, but this is expected to jump to 52% with the next 4 years. And, you know, we can see this in shopping, but I think it extends to engaging in the brand, how you get educated, but it also might encompass promotions and self-promotion programs as well, of how you might even enter those programs. And then again, you can see this has been spurred on by COVID. The QR code made a comeback, and we're all looking for having contactless ways of shopping. So we can certainly see that we're going to experiment and expect more from smart tech. We're going to want more information, and we're going to use our mobile phones to kind of explore content like never before. So if you're a retailer with physical products, the idea of allowing consumers to contactlessly explore that content is going to be phenomenal. And then direct to consumer is going to continue to grow. So 19% of people have signed up for a new subscription service, and nearly half of Brits are looking to try further subscription sites for food and drink. But what's really interesting, I find, is 20% of people aged 18 to 40 prefer to head directly to a brand's website when they start online shopping. So before you went to Amazon, you went to eBay and maybe Argos. Now 20% of people are now considering going direct to a brand's website. So having your own direct consumer offering, if you're an FMCG brand, has suddenly become pretty important. So we think it's clear that tech is opening up opportunity for brands to reach and influence shoppers. And here's a great campaign that we really like. We do a lot of work in fashion, and we've worked with this guy before actually for one of our clients. He did a great campaign where he really wanted to connect to real consumers. And what he found is a lot of, because of the drop shipping culture and the value that's associated, a lot of those drops are actually bought by bots. So programs that have been programmed to kind of get them first. And the way he allowed people to purchase those trainers is you had to enter via your heartbeat. So you had to use some sound on your computer, and that acted as a way of gaining entry into the competition. So 120,000 people signed up for the chance to win a few pairs of sneakers. So we did a little bit of research on what's happening in the kind of the shopper space across different types of businesses and places we can shop. So from independents to convenience stores to subscription. And the truth of it is there's no real dominance here in terms of how people are shopping. People have made the switch again, pushed on by COVID, to consider shopping in a multi-channel way. There is no real dominance of any single channel here. You possibly would say that physical has maybe taken a drop back. That may come back, of course. So what this means is having a connected commerce experience where each channel is just as important, is super critical. And we did some further research to understand, if you're a brand that has a physical led store, what do people want from it? It's one of the big questions. We haven't been able to go to shops. And what we found is 49% of us want more brand led experiences and entertainment during physical grocery shops. 58% of us would like to have more workshops, more activities, and 52% of us want Q&A sessions with brand and product experts. So there's a huge demand for the physical retail environment to not be the center of gravity, but to potentially redefine its purpose and allow us to connect in different ways. So the key takeout here is the connected consumer journey across multiple channels provides opportunities for brands to kind of connect with content experiences in different ways and drive that purchase intent in both the physical and digital world. So whether you prefer the word omni-channel, multi-channel, or connected commerce, this is now the new norm by the looks of it, and physical retail is actually now lagging. A lot of brands felt that their maybe digital experiences were far behind. How do you keep up with the likes of Amazon and some of the retailers that have been purchased recently by Boohoo is an example of proven about driving e-commerce and the power of that. But the danger of this is physical could get left behind, and it's got a real role for it to play in consumers' lives. So we don't have time for Life Unfiltered, where we were going to talk about the representation of real life and the raw and unfiltered and the authenticity that we're looking for. So I'm going to flick on to our key takeouts. The key takeouts that we're going to talk about that we've covered is when it comes to conscious consumerism, don't make consumers pick between themselves and the world. When it comes to communities, think of them as catalysts to cut through the complexities of making choices. When it comes to finding the advantage in the at-home life, this is about supporting consumers' well-being. When it comes to the connected consumer across this sort of multifaceted journey, this is about providing the right content experiences and really thinking about the both worlds interacting and especially reconsidering what the physical world is for. And when we're soon able to get out into the physical world, the kind of 1920s boom that's going to be upon us, think about that idea of enhancing these moments to catch up with our friends and our family that we dearly want to see. So in summary, where we started from, if 2020 was the year of homogenized marketing, let's make this the breakout year for creativity as consumers break free from the boredom. So here's a recap of the trends. If anyone wants just a copy of this this nice little chart as well to put on their wall behind them, please let us know. And if you want to talk to us about the rest of the deck, although some of them areas I accidentally stumbled into because we forgot to hide the slides, but hopefully I didn't confuse you too much, starting one and then moving on to the next. But yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. Corey, so we've hopefully got enough time for some Q&A.
Yeah, we've. I mean, we just had one question which was about whether we will be sharing the presentation, and we absolutely will be. But if you've got any questions you want to put into the Q&A tab, now's the time to do it. I think just to give some people some time to add a question in. We did have a few. We did have people share with us what their concerns were for the next 9 to 6 months. And one which I think I'll ask now, which was I think very interesting, which was about if the new normal should change the brand positioning and the brand story. And what do you think about that, Chris?
If the new normal is here to stay, should brands change their brand positioning?
Yeah, is it a time for brands to really, if there are all these fundamental changes happening, which clearly there are, and there is, from everything you've said there, there's across the board, there's a hunger for something, right? There's a hunger to go back to fun. There's a hunger for brands to express themselves in a certain way. There's a hunger for people to get back out there. Is now a good time for brands to be revisiting what their proposition is and what their brand
Yeah,
story is?
it's a good question. So I think that if you're a nostalgic brand, now's a pretty good time. If you stand for that as a purpose, there is a bunch of consumers out there that are going to be looking for comfort, familiarity, which is great. If that's not your core reason to exist as a kind of comfort brand, I think the role and the brand purpose of brands should to lead and reflect culture. So it's a difficult, challenging time where a year in the length of a brand is nothing. So you don't want to rip up the rule book of your complete DNA of your brand and change what you stand for. I think what brands should do is adapt fast, test and learn in this new frontier, follow those trends, and let's see, how many of these trends cement themselves for a year ahead. The unfortunate thing about COVID is, from a global perspective, it's 2023 is the likelihood of when the world would have reached herd immunity. So we're a long, long way off that across the globe. For the UK, we're going to be one of the fastest out of the blocks. So what I would be doing if I was a global brand is I would be studying the UK. I would be riding with those trends to learn from them, and then looking ahead to see how I can replicate that across the world.
Cool. Okay, we've got a few more questions that are coming in, so I'll just read them out. The Life Unfiltered is interesting. Given how image conscious Instagram is, it's always perfect. Would be great to be more real in our images and not tidy up for every shoot to make spaces immaculate. I'm not too sure what the question is there, but I mean, I think the point is there that having everything completely polished is no longer the be all and end all, right? People like looking behind the lens and seeing kind of the reality of it. I think there's definitely this audiences who are kind of sick of seeing everything that's completely polished. I remember I was watching an interview with someone that's whose channel has exploded because she focuses on all the shit that's happening in her life, but she sees it in a very funny way, but I guess what does that mean for brands?
I think the truth of about brands is consumers distrust them, and so what we do to counter that is we try and make everything look polished, and as well as particular social channels do that as well, and then we try and blend into looking reputable. The reality is, because of that distrust, it's kind of backfiring. And I think if brands can be more honest with how they approach subject matters, I think it's great. I think bloggers like the Unmumsy Mum that really tell it how it is. I think there's a lot for brands to learn from that and just have a slice of honesty. It depends on the category, but there's certainly a lot of brands can spread very quickly by playing that kind of that option.
Cool. Okay, here's another question about the holiday industry or the travel industry. It's saying, is it inevitable that holidaying will boom when safe and available again? And would it be better for holiday operators to brand build over promoting short-term holiday offers that may not happen?
So holidaying is gonna, I think, boom, right? The reality is the uncertainty, and I'm going to put a UK perspective on this. First of all, you boom, holidays will boom, but because of uncertainty, people will choose to book in the UK for the first part of the summer until certainty is granted, which hopefully will be sometime around the 22nd of February. The government will set out its guidelines. How distinct that will be is unknown. So I think that there's a huge desire for people to go on holiday. Long haul holidays tend to come up as the first mentioned. Whether people will go through with that purchase decision once they have fear of how that country is responding to COVID. It depends on when everyone gets their herd immunity and how confident that we suddenly feel. So my guess is there'll be two halves to the year. There'll be the staycation moment, and then suddenly, once we've had our injections, we will throw caution to the wind and enjoy ourselves in far-flung places. I think the opportunity to tap into an emotional high ground is certainly something that brands, if you're a travel brand, you should be thinking about. I think On the Beach did a really great campaign recently, focusing on the idea that everything's better on the beach. So they tapped into an idea that kind of really resonated with people. Whatever your current situation, everything's better on the beach. They didn't mention price, they didn't mention deals, but that's their brand-led advertising. So I think there's why we're in this dreamlike state of wanting to go on holiday. It's a great time to indulge consumers in fantasies of dreams of going away when we can't quite bring ourselves to look at a price and buy. So given that two halves of the year that I just suggested, the first half I would probably be thinking about brand-led, and the second half of the year I'd be thinking about more destination and price-led.
It's interesting you say about delving into people's fantasies, because it's with tech innovation and AR and VR being able to take people to different places, and that form of escapism could be, I can see that kind of really blowing up a lot this year, just because the tech, it's easier to kind of create those brand executions that kind of help people take away. On a personal note, we've got to the stage where I'm just looking at anything that's different is just more exciting than the humdrum of the same old thing again. And we know that from what we're doing with some of our brands, there's some exciting things to be done on some new innovative kind of platforms that brands can make use of to take people away and plant that seed of what can be. But I've got another question here about e-commerce players, and the question is there demand for purely e-commerce players to have physical space? So those, I guess, who have traditionally started purely online, the demand has grown because of business has grown over the past year and a half. Should they consider taking that back into the physical space when things change?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I used to work with eBay many moons ago, as an example. Used to run their CRM program, and the most successful CRM program we ever did for eBay was to send people some DM in the post, which was phenomenal, right? You think eBay, CRM, email, SMS, whatever is going to be the most effective channel. But suddenly doing something out of the blue just talked to those loyalists, and it was surprising. So I think the same is true of bricks and mortar. If you're an e-commerce brand, it's surprising that you should do something for you kind of capture an unfair share of attention. So the PR value alone is strong. The second benefit it brings is any brand will have its loyalists, and those loyalists will flock to your shop if it's physical, to experience the brand in its full glory. So even if only 0.5% of people go to that store, it allows those people to tell the brand story across a wider environment. And the third reason I'd be thinking about physical store is the distrust that we have for brands. So for some reason, we still trust physical bricks and mortars a bit more than we do online. We have some inertia to purchase. That's why we still have abandonment rates are higher on e-com versus in-store. So I would think about an outpost. If I was a purely e-com brand, I'd be thinking about an outpost. that could achieve those three things. So could engage my most loyal people, could build trust and build talkability.
Well, okay, talking about CRM, got a question around that. When it comes to email marketing, and this is an interesting question because, just from our point of view, we want to promote our events and we want to strike that right balance. But they've said, how frequently in a month should you be engaging with your database with the likes of discounts and offers? This obviously comes, this needs to be balanced up with the fear of consumer fatigue.
I think it depends on the category, right? So if I'm in a long purchase funnel, like buying a car, where I might have, a 3-year cycle of consideration, that's the level of frequency doesn't need to be that high. I just need to be in contact for over that period of time. If I'm buying insurance and there is a 3.5-day window from getting my quote from my existing provider to being engaged and checking on comparison engines, there's a very small window to engage with consumers. So I think it depends on the category. The honest answer is A/B testing, optimize what works. And if you're just doing the same thing to everyone, you're not going to learn anything. If you can test things, learn things, and then look at the increased value that you get in the short term, but also the long term of doing that. Just because you hit someone harder via email to come and buy from you doesn't mean that they love you. So brand love and brand scores potentially more important as a long-term indicator of brand growth. So would they recommend you? It's probably more important than whether they're clicking on your emails. So my having spent years in sort of traditional advertising and digital advertising, the industry's obsession, just because it's digital, we can measure everything. And because we can measure it, we think those analytics and those data points are important. Who says click-through rates are actually important for a brand? Maybe they're completely meaningless. And when you look at things like last click data, we attribute, so many brands over attribute value to the last part of the funnel, just because you can measure it, and therefore they overvalue the importance of digital. And there's some great data from the IPA if anyone wants a copy of it, of understanding the value of long-term advertising versus short-term sales generation.
Great. Another question here about the trend about buying local and British made, and how we see that translating to food and drinks.
Yeah, I think it's an easy one to think about, I guess. So I think there's moments in the UK calendar where we're particularly open to British products. So Wimbledon being, I guess, the poster child of an iconic British moment. If you're a British-made brand, and let's say you're a strawberry brand, that's a great moment to be talking about British strawberries. I think that's a really obvious example. Pimm's previously worked with them over a few years, limited edition bottles that tapped into the same patriotic moment. And obviously, if there's anything big happening in the royal calendar, that creates a huge moment. But they're the big obvious things. I think the underlying current is consumers are excited to buy British. So I think it's, we're slightly moved on from the days of just slapping a flag on it and job done. I think it's about telling authentic stories, talking about whatever those factors are that make it. What do we want to associate when we think about British? Is it craftsmanship? Is it care? Is it attention? One of those things that we want to tell stories about and bringing those stories to life. So making sure they're fit and relevant for the consumer is key.
But we got just a couple more questions. One more about D2C. So the question is, what do you think are the main driving forces for more people shopping on brand sites rather than purchasing the brands on larger shopping sites like Ocado and Amazon, etc.? I think it's a really good question.
Yeah, good question. So I think there's a couple of factors that have played into D2C. So I think limited edition is one way of driving the appeal for consumers. So we all know the grocers, the big retailers, their range reviews are slow and not fast moving. So if I'm into a brand, I can update my product SKUs a lot quicker. And if we're a brand that consumers really love, they can get the latest. So many brands have stolen the drop shipping culture from the world of trainers and understood that they can be culturally relevant by changing their product lineup a lot more a lot faster, which allows them to do, if you're a brand like Brewdog, for instance, it allows you to do newsjacking. It allows you to tap your product into what's happening in culture and move at speed. That's kind of a new frontier for many brands that, you know, if you work with a grocer, that's been almost impossible to achieve. So that's one reason I think. I think it's also the distrust that we have of brands. So going direct to their website allows us to have a deeper, more engaged experience with the brand. So, you know, we want to learn a little bit more. So I think why and it's probably driven by the fact we've all got more time on our hands, right? You know, so the kind of instant gratification of purchasing something has kind of removed a little bit. ASOS or ASOS, however you which prefer to say it, ASOS or ASOS, they did some research during lockdown, and what they found is consumers were making a lot more considered purchases. So they knew that because people were sending less products back. So they were choosing wisely their products. So I think it's about this idea of not wanting to make a wrong choice and choosing what you really want, which means you want to know a little bit more. And I think that what D2C has done very well is combined with subscription. So once I've made that decision, I can click on it, set it up, and forget about it. So while we're happy to do that with one or two products in our lives, pasta, cheese boxes, beer, whatever it might be, we don't seem to want to do the same thing with our grocery order. We still want to have some of our products we want to change out, we want to explore. But I think we saw it first of all in the low interest categories, you know, razors and such like, where people wanted to do subscription, but it slowly crept up into the more interesting passion subject matters where people are quite happy to have the same experience every month. So they would be some of the factors that I think are driving the D2C growth. And maybe one more I can give you, and a speculative, this one, I don't know if it's true, but the British psyche of running out, the idea of being reliant on a sole provider, the toilet roll phenomenon. You know, we bought toilet roll because we wanted to not just feel like we weren't going to run out, but it was big and solid. So the idea of multiple things turning up at our houses is obviously less reliant on one provider. But the real truth of that is it's lovely in the boredom that is the lockdown. Isn't it lovely to get something through the post every few days, right? That's far more exciting than just your big Sainsbury's shop turning up once or twice a week. I think it's actually helped us cope with the boredom. I haven't got any data to support that, but that would be my guess of what's really driven it during these times.
Cool. The last question now, and then I think we can wrap up. But you mentioned ASOS. You know, interestingly, ASOS just bought Topshop and Topman. The final question is: what are the key industries that will inhabit our high streets in years to come?
Good question. What are the key industries? So, you know, I hope it's more. I mean, maybe this is more hope. I hope it'll be more experience-led brands. You know, I can imagine going into, you know, a very small cinema in the future with maybe 10 or 15 seats. You know, the everyman model. I think you might go and have mini experiences, and the purpose of going to a shopping mall might not be to go and buy things. It might be to go and experience things. It would be more like, you know, a day out at a theme park where you almost see each shop as a ride. And I think brands that can pivot to brand experience in retail were the ones that will do that. I think Yeah, so I don't know if there's specific. Almost any industry can be an experience led. It just needs some brands to move on that opportunity beyond the kind of obvious one. So yeah, I don't know if I have a specific that I think it's going to be full of coffee shops and insurance companies in the future, but experience led brands will probably win out.
Cool. Great. Thanks very much, Chris. Listen, I think this is a good time to wrap up. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. Just to remind you that we're only able to cover 5 of the 10 areas. So if you are interested in we will be sending out the deck and recording the video as well. But if you want to follow up with us and delve deeper into any of these territories that Chris has mentioned, or the ones we weren't able to, then we're happy to kind of set up a time to do that with you all. Also, just to mention that backed by, I guess you could say, backed by popular demand, was a webinar we ran last month, or maybe a few months ago actually, about the new face of luxury and how Gen Z are driving change for the world's most prestigious luxury brands, and how it can, what other brands can learn from that. So we've got that on March the 10th. Which we'll be letting you know about again. So thanks very much for joining us, and yeah, see you soon.
Cool. Thank you, everyone.